bird feathers were piled in the street because birds have become the last resource of food on planet Earth. Those with enough money had migrated Earth before the War of the Sky had a chance to affect them. As a result, the remaining inhabitants took to the streets, the beaches, the gullies, and the deserts to stage a mass killing of the birds in question in an attempt to rebuild the world's infrastructures. However, not knowing of the disease with which the birds were infected, many of the survivors grew ill and eventually passed away, leaving the remaining survivors at a very low total. People did not realise, though, that these copies would one day turn on them, and the events that I'm describing now are from the year 2156. So, to get you up to speed, the year is 2156. Earth has been vacated of human beings save for a few remaining wild survivors, and the War of the Sky has caused Earth's key food resources and economy to dwindle, and has left birds as the only feasible means of sustenance. Now that we are on the same page, I can continue with my story. Her means of and will for survival were growing thin. The ongoing war meant that Earth no longer had a stable economy, not that it was ever stable beforehand, and so she was out of work. Since there were no bills to pay, she spent most of the time tinkering with the space-age technology in her lab or room. She had a pet goldfish before it was plucked out of its bowl by a hungry seagull, and she now considers her carbon copy as her closest friend and or relative. She lives in an undisclosed flat in an unknown city in Europe, so she despises them and their ways. In terms of snow, the ground is always so thick with bird feathers that it constantly reminds her of winter. She also grew up without any schooling, formal or otherwise, but instead learned to read and write through the use and adaptation and engineering of the universe's advanced technology. Her carbon copy always brought her new information from the world as the War of the Sky unfolded. However, one day it did not do so. So she came to the conclusion that the war was over, or at least had slowed, and that it would be safe to venture outside her apartment. This was far from accurate. In fact, the culling was at its peak as she stepped out into the chaos. Of course, she tried to turn on her heel and go back inside, but the fire exit door had slammed behind her, and, unfortunately, she had misplaced a swipe card for the building. She looked around in exasperation and headed for the other side of the street. This was in an even worse way, with the feathers effectively forming a dirty white blanket over the sidewalk. The rain, which had started as a trickle, eventually turned into a downpour, and did little to clear a path for her, instead mulching the feathers into unfathomable shapes and textures.